So I will say too that when we started the podcast, originally it was just sharing your stories, but then my mom and I decided that we wanted to add to it because there was so much that you shared that we wanted to expand on it. And so we decided to start the immeasurably more mini messages. And if you've listened to them, we just expand on the topics of the stories you've shared. And also, your stories have inspired us to share more. And something we shared in the month of May was mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we both have our own journeys with mental health, as I'm sure a lot of you do. And so that's also something we want to talk about at the end of this session. But your stories inspired us to also share parts of our story. So thank you. Do you want to share something?
I just wanted to add how Erin mentioned that other people's lives are being impacted by these podcast episodes. And when we decided to launch the podcast, obviously we wanted to impact our community. And when I say our community, it's all of you in this room. And we wanted to share your stories and we wanted to be an encouragement to each other. But I don't really think that we ever imagined that this would impact so many other people. And I'm just going to give you an example. There's a gentleman, his name is Mark. You know, I'm going to talk about him. He's a painter. He's done some painting for us. We love Mark. And Mark, a painter who is just, you know, out there doing his job every day, listens to the podcast and has been moved by your stories. And he texts me and tells me, "Oh, how about this story?" And, you know, we'll go back and forth about the story. So just know that, and in my heart too, if just one person is impacted by what you have shared, then we have done what we have set out to do. If one person, but the fact is, it's more than one person. So I just want to, again, thank all of you who have shared your stories. And if you have yet to share your story and you want to share your story, we want you to. Lives are being changed, people's lives are being impacted, and it's because of you and the journey that you've gone through that you've been brave enough to share. And again, as Erin already mentioned, my mom studied podcasts for a year. Who does that? My mom does. And here we are. And now we're going into the fourth season. And I also just want to thank Erin for using the gifts that God has given her. She's amazing at what she's doing. And it's I'm in awe of watching how God has used Erin's life. And that has not been in the absence of struggle. It's, in fact, in the midst of a lot of struggle that she's going through. So I just want to thank you, Erin. Don't you cry, for persevering and doing this. And that I get to be a part of it too with her is incredibly humbling. And we have to do some edits when we do our sessions. For some reason, I screw up all the time when I pray. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing at the end of our immeasurably more messages. Like, I just can't seem to pray. It's very odd. But anyway, we are so thankful. And so, ladies, if you've been on the podcast and you've chosen to come up and share, these chairs are for you. You know who you are. So you're not going to sit there. You're going to come up. And two guys. Are the guys invited? Oh, okay. I guess we'll let the guys come up. Drake, right? Kyle. No, Drake. Oh, not Drake. That's right. Drake wasn't. Drake, that was just I just put it out there. Kyle and Wyatt. Wyatt, there you are. Yeah, we need more chairs. Okay, so we decided to do this to have this set up this way, so that in the event, if you haven't listened to the podcast, like, what's your problem? But if you have yet to listen to the podcast, everybody's going to share. We picked one nugget from each episode to share today. And this is for you guys. So when we share your part, your nugget, you don't have to share your whole story and all that, because we would be here till tomorrow. Right? So we have to be, you know what I'm saying, just that one nugget that we shared, that we're going to share today, just kind of share why you share that in the episode. Okay. How's that sound? Everyone good? Is anyone missing? No. Okay. Do you guys have a mic? Yeah, you have a mic. Okay. Okay, and we're going to read do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. We're going to read the title of their episode, which really culminates everything that they talk about. And then I want to share a quote that really impacted me that you guys have shared. And we're just going to take turns, but I'm going to just say the title and say your quote. And if you want to share something, I'll hand you the mic. Okay.
They will share something. They are going to share something.
Okay. Okay. Lisa Brackbill. Choose joy. It doesn't matter how long we live, it matters how we choose to live it.
Okay. Yes. So when Tori was here with us, we for about a month after diagnosis, we just kind of hunkered down at home and we were like, this is just too much. But then we made a joint decision that she deserved the best possible life we could give her. And so we decided to fill it with adventures. But at the same time, we had to, go at her pace. And we're learning that with our twins now too. We want to cram all this stuff into their life because we're so used to having Tori, which was such a short life. And so we have to remind ourselves we have time. But the lesson that we learned is exactly what Erin pulled from the episode, is that it doesn't matter how long we have. We can live for 90 years and do nothing with our lives and feel like we wasted all that time, or we can, live to be 2 and do 50 bucket list items and have a huge impact on the world. So that's why we said that.
Amen. We should be taking notes. If you're not taking notes, you should be. I'm not this bossy normally, but that is so true. Thank you so much for sharing that. It does not matter how long we live. It matters what we do with the time that we've been given. And I think that's something that all of us in this room can resonate, right? That resonates with all of us. And yet, oh, my mom's raising her hand. Oh, this is being recorded. All right, great. Wonderful. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mom. Casey, a greater plan. I just keep having to tell myself that there's a plan, and he wouldn't just take an innocent boy from us without having a greater plan.
So after Dawson passed, it kind of clicked because we all know how Virginia is with newborn screening. But when Dawson passed, he was wearing a onesie that said lifesaver. And one day it just spoke to me and I was like, he will save lives between newborn screening and we donated his brains and tissues. And, I don't know why this happened to us, but I know God has a plan and he chose us. And I just know even from heaven, he's going to do big things. And I think him just wearing that onesie, it just clicked. And I know God has a plan for everything. So, yeah.
Is it okay if I add 2 cents? This is the immeasurably more part. You tracking with me? I love that, what you just said. My mom's like, yeah, I can't help it. You're right. That even from heaven, that just hit me like a ton of bricks, that even from heaven, our children, the ones that are there, are still making an impact here on earth. That's huge. And I pray that all of our lives would be able to do that. And we can do that.
Amen, Mom. Beth, find your people. Find people that are going through similar things, because that's probably where you're going to find your people, because they will be able to understand you in a way that other people can't.
So one of my most difficult parts of my journey with Eden was I lost my entire friend's church support system after she was diagnosed. And I know now that's not completely unique to me. And it was so hard. But once I got to a place where I was able to forgive them and look around me to see who the Lord had put in my life, I have so many amazing friendships that I never would have had, and friends who become family because I was able to connect with people based on our similarities. And just looking around this room, the family that I have that I wouldn't have had probably if I had not lost that huge support system. And my daughter Estella, who's here, and she's just a little ray of sunshine. She's had over 40 surgeries in the past 5 years. And it just going through that, I knew then who to connect with. I knew to reach out to those families who are experiencing similar things. And so that's made that part easier for probably both of us, because I have close friendships, children who experience the same sort of medical trauma that she does. And then she has those friends as well. So if you look around, open your eyes, connect with the people that God has put in front of you who have walked similar journeys, then you will be blessed beyond measure.
I just want to add that something that we share in our Immeasurably More message off of Beth's story is the importance of community. And I believe that God brings people into our life for a reason during specific seasons of our life. And I believe that He has brought all of us together for a reason. And this is an incredible community of people. And like Beth said, like we can rely on each other. We are family. We're here for each other. And it's because of the hard things that we have walked through and continue to walk through. And I think that it is such an incredible blessing in the midst of so much pain.
Amen. We're going to hear a lot of amens this morning. Christina. Oh, sorry. Lena. Unshakable faith in unimaginable circumstances. If you know Lena, you know, like she is a woman of not many words, but when she speaks, it's like, yes, Lena. And this is it. Seek Jesus, even if you don't think you need him.
It's true. When Salvatore was diagnosed, we were left with our mouths open. And then 2 days later, when we got home from Duke, I found out that Giovanni also had metachromatic leukodystrophy. And you get mad at Jesus, you get mad at God, but I knew he was there and I knew he was walking with us because he has them and he protects them. So you seek Jesus even if you think you don't need it.
We both said amen over here. We just didn't do it at the mic this time. Christina, an unlikely miracle and an unexpected gift. I can testify that God used the mess, the struggle, the challenges to draw me to himself, to show me his love, to reveal his faithfulness.
I believe so strongly that God doesn't squander our pain, that every tear, every heartache matters to him, that he sees us and that he works redemptively in the midst of that. And the greatest gift he can give us is himself. And he wants to use our pain to draw us to himself. And so that's what we get to say yes to.
Are you guys getting sick of me saying amen? I'm trying not to say it now. Okay. Bobby, he is, the title is Inherent Joy. He is enough. He is absolutely sufficient for every need.
We have 2 children who were diagnosed with a leukodystrophy. We had a long diagnostic journey, and our younger daughter was diagnosed first, and she was also diagnosed with another condition called SCA8. It's a spinocerebellar ataxia. And then a couple months later, when she was diagnosed with CTX, we found out that our oldest son had it as well. So I think my biggest struggle was the diagnostic journey of a year and a half and not knowing what was wrong and knowing it was getting worse. And I think what I learned out of all of that, the biggest thing that I took away was that we could lose our health. We can lose our financial stability. We can lose members of our family. members of our support system, our community, and lose all of those things that we relied on, and find out that God is enough, that He sustains, and everything else taken away, everything else removed, He's still sufficient. And there is comfort in that, because we know no matter what happens next or in the future, He's still going to be enough.
Your story and that quote reminds me of the verse that says, where God says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And that's really something that I saw in your story and in all of your stories, is that God's power was made perfect in your weakness. Thank you for sharing. Kristen and Kyle Webb, giving the unknown to the God who knows. You quickly learn that He has this huge plan for you that keeps impacting lives around you. And you can see it every day if you just stop and look at it.
So we have 2 children with Krabbe leukodystrophy, Mabry, who's in heaven, and Owen, who's sitting over there. But I first want to say that everything that's been said so far, we're just both over here like, yes, yes. Like, I feel like our stories intertwine so well because we all know what each other are talking about. And I just think it's really cool that something a little different came out in each podcast. But for us, I think there was so much waiting for a diagnosis, waiting to find out results of a test, waiting for this, waiting for that. And we always found Him there in the waiting. He made Himself very present and very known. And even when we least expected it, and a lot of times I felt like He would give me reassurance, and then I just felt like I didn't deserve another reassurance. And so I kind of felt like He made Himself known to me and He wasn't going to do it again. And who was I to say that, because He kept doing it over and over and over again. So I think we just found Him a lot in our waiting.
Yeah, I would say that it's was the most difficult for us whenever you have your bad days, and it's hard to really focus on the impact that these kids have on not just us as parents, but the community that you have around you and the lives that they impact. And so for me, it was just important to stop and not get caught up in all the negative stuff, and just realize how much beauty there is around each of our kids. And I guess, I mean, having Owen right after Mabry, you know, it was tough for us and tough for me to find the good, even with Owen as he was going through his transplant, and to see him now and to see all the lives that he's changed, and the fact that his life was changed so much by Mabry's and he didn't get to meet her. And it's just kind of one of those things that there's so much beauty that I just had to stop and just look for it. And man, it blew me away by all the lives that he's changed and that Mabry's changed, and that each one of your kids here will change. And so that's what I.
Thank you. And I'm just looking at Owen over there, watching you guys and smiling. I mean, that it just, and it's, you know, seeing those things, the beauty in the midst of all the brokenness, is sometimes you just have to be intentional to stop and look around and receive the gifts that are right in front of you, even when so many things are not going well. Thank you. Thank you, Owen. Diana, God's presence in your pain. I know through my grief, the one person who has never failed me, the one thing I can always count on, no matter what, is the presence of God.
So I have 2 children with Krabbe, my son Anthony and my son Dalton, who both are angels now. When Anthony passed away, I guess because I was so relieved that he was no longer suffering, I just found comfort in God's grace, and I just kept going. I was raising other children, and literally I put God on the back burner, not realizing he was carrying me through all my grief. So somehow I thought that I didn't grieve. Maybe I wasn't supposed to because I trusted God. But when Dalton came, there were so many other emotions. And, of course, he had the experimental bone marrow transplant. And so 21 and a half years later, almost 22 years later, when God chose to bring him back home with him, the grief was phenomenal. Like, it outweighed everything in my life. I couldn't help my other children. And I remember crying out to God for the first 6 months and asking him to take me home because I could no longer do anything. But then I finally realized, he was the one that was getting me up every single morning. He was the one that was putting a smile on my face in front of other people so I could tell them that I was okay when I was really dying inside. I was smothering. I literally could not feel like I could breathe. But he was putting that breath in me. There wasn't anything I could do. So in that grief, I knew that God was the one keeping me together, and I can only do it through him.
Amen. I just want to add, because of your title, God's presence in your pain, that as I listened to every single one of your stories, God's presence was so evident in every single part. And it impacted me and allowed me to be reminded and realize that God is present in the midst of my own pain too. Thank you. Tammy, God's hand in your plans. The more I surrendered into my faith and my belief and my love for Jesus, the more I found peace and confirmation that I was where I needed to be.
I feel like everyone's story, it resonates, this title, along with everyone's story and their own titles, we can all, resonate with. When I say God's hands is in our plans, it's still so very true. If each and every one of us just take the time to reflect on our whole entire life, through all the struggles, through whether you were strong in your faith or any kind of faith for that matter, or questioning your, what is God? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why is my son dying? Why? Even when you thought your path wasn't going in the way you thought it was going, he took that road with you. And he gave you what you needed. He has his hand in your plans.
And that's just such a hard truth, what you just said. Because not one of us, I don't mean to speak for all of us in the room, but I can't imagine that any one of us in this room would have ever chosen the path that we've all been on. And yet, we have gained so much as a result. But that's hard. It's not an easy thing, and I don't think any of us are up here, sharing these bits without the reality that all the heartbreak that goes along with it, all of the deep struggles that go along with it. But these are powerful truths that we've spoken, and many more to come, that are life-changing if we allow them to be. Thank you, Tammy. Oh, it's my turn. Oh, Kelly, God is in your story. You'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. So embrace every moment that you can. I'm going to repeat that because I love that. You'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. So embrace every moment that you can.
So I want to tell you a little bit how I got here. So Hunter was born in February of 1997. And my daughter Madison was born in September of 1997. Jill was in Buffalo. I was in Medina, probably about, I don't know, maybe an hour drive. And I believe Hunter was diagnosed in June. Okay. So I was pregnant for Madison at the time. And I thought, oh, that poor woman, that poor woman. My heart just bled for her. And of course, I think about the child that I'm carrying. And Madison was actually diagnosed before we left the hospital. But what Madison had was very rare. There was no name for it. And I always thought about Jill. And I thought, well, you know, maybe someday our paths will cross. And a friend of mine had a prayer breakfast May 23rd, 2022. And Jill was there. And I said to him, I would love the opportunity to speak with Jill if I can, just to kind of tell her, you know, that Madison and Hunter were in the same year. So I got the opportunity to speak with Jill and Jackie. And little did I know that that moment changed my life. I said to Jackie, because of what Madison has is very rare, I said, I have always felt so alone. There are not support groups. And Jackie grabbed my hand and she said, I never want you to feel like you're alone. I want you to join Hunter's Hope Foundation. So I said, okay, that would be great. And then she looked at Jill and said, how do you think Kelly would do for the podcast? I'm telling you, I did not even know what a podcast was. I didn't even know how to say leukodystrophy. I didn't even know how to say symposium. Lena taught me how to say symposium. But I believe that God puts us where we need to be. And I didn't know that the retreat was going to happen. And these women that I met here are some of the strongest women ever. And I was telling Amy last night, I didn't get the opportunity to meet Amy because she was not at the retreat, that there are days that they carry me through, because there are days where I think, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. And then I think about people like Amy, so many of you here that would give anything to do it again. And it does, it carries me through. And poor Julie, I met her in the lobby and I ran up to her. She also wasn't at the retreat. And I'm like, Julie, like I felt like I knew her all my life because she shared some of her darkest moments. And it takes a strong person to do that. And I just want to say that if God could write a prescription for me, that was it. That would have been my prescription. So I am so thrilled to be here with you guys. And I love so many of you ladies. So thank you.
We're so thankful to have you a part of our Hunter's Hope family. And thank you for doing the podcast too. Carlita, even if God is still good, but if not, he is still good. Even if he doesn't do exactly what we want him to do, God's faithfulness is still good.
I think when I talked about this on the podcast, it really was bringing me back to the worst point in our lives, which was diagnosis and transplant, and being at Duke for 6 months. So obviously just trauma and terror watching your little baby go through that. But it was so confusing because in the midst of that, we felt such comfort and care and love from God. He had people show up for us in ways that we wouldn't even know to ask for. He had a community of people that we didn't know show up for us. During that time, we just, although it was hard, we truly felt God covering us during that whole time and showing up just through each person that we interacted with, whether it be people back home or doctors or connecting with families. I met Kristen while we were there. And it was hard not to see
that God was still doing good despite this devastating diagnosis. We were still seeing the ways that he was still working in Ezra's life, in our life, and still producing the goodness that he does and will continue to do in all of our kiddos. So
I just want to share quick that throughout the podcast, God laid specific short messages on my heart. Literally, they were like 8 minutes to 10 minutes long. And Carlita, your story inspired one of them, and it was called The Faithfulness of God in the Fire. And if you don't know, there's a story in the Bible where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego wouldn't bow down to this other God because they would only worship the one true God. And so they were told that if they wouldn't worship this God, that they would be thrown into the fiery furnace. And they refused. They refused to worship anyone but the one true God. And the verse I love in that is when they say that we believe that our God will save us, but even if he does not, we still will not worship this other God. And that is so powerful to me. And it's one of my favorite stories because it just reminds me that no matter what, I'm choosing Jesus. No matter what my circumstances, I'm choosing him. And even if my life doesn't look the way that I want it to, I trust that he has a plan. So thank you so much, because that was just such a powerful part of your story and it really blessed me. So thank you.
I'm so excited. I have to add something. Can you tell? Like, another part of that story is that the people that were outside of the furnace looked in, they saw 4 people. Only 3 people were put in. And that 4th is a representation of God with us. So even when we are in the fire, God is faithful and he is with us in the midst of the fire. And when you were just sharing what you shared, Carlita, I was also thinking about the fact that God is fighting battles for us that we know nothing about. And that also made me think of the people that we meet that are in the midst of their own. And you guys, we have the ability to be so compassionate to people, even when you go through a drive-through. If you know what I'm saying, they get your order wrong. But no, but we have the ability, I feel like we've been given this gift of compassion because of what we've walked through, because really, we don't know what anyone else is going through in this life. And they're fighting their own battles. And so we have the opportunity to be gracious and kind and compassionate towards other people because we know what it's like to walk through the fire and to come out alive ultimately. Julie. Is Julie up here? Oh, there she is. Okay. Being the change when your circumstances don't change. You are the picture of this. Your story is like that. And the quote we pulled was, as a believer in Jesus Christ, we just have to be willing to take one more step and trust that his foundation is going to be underneath the next step.
Yes. When they saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna say? And I'm Tyler's grandmother. Tyler's been with me his whole life, but you know, I could have given him back to his mom and dad, and luckily God chose a different reason to let me keep Tyler. 2 weeks after the podcast, I had to call the ambulance for myself because I was in so much pain. And it turned out I had a bowel obstruction, which they found lymphoma. And so it's like, really? Cancer? But in this journey with Tyler, the God that I put in a box, the God that I tried to manipulate, I was able to let go of that and say, I can't control you, God. You are in control. And I was able to turn it over. And in the last 10 months, I have developed a freedom that I didn't have ever in my life, because I wanted to be the one running the show. And so The other scripture that I absolutely love is he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. And that's Proverbs 11:25. What I enjoy is walking into a room with Tyler and having his joy encompass everybody else's life, and for them to just receive God's power through Tyler. And it's only because of him, I think, that, or what I know, it's because of Tyler, I am where I am today. And so Hunter's Hope is the community. I didn't lose my church. I gave up on church, because when you ask for help and they don't show up, you just quit asking. This is a community. And this is, you know that you know what we're going through, and we are not alone. I felt so alone for so long, but because of Hunter's Hope, I'm no longer alone. Thank you.
You're right. You no longer are alone. And we didn't know, I did not know that about your health situation. So this community is here for you too, obviously, and we'll be praying, and God will take care of business. But in the control part, I'm a recovering, I say this, I am recovering. I'm a recovering control freak. I think you all are, so stop laughing. Like, you definitely all are, at least most of these women that I know. But I love what you shared about, like, letting go of that. And there's so much freedom in letting go. And it's so cliche, let go, let God, and all of those things. But it is true. I feel like we gain freedom when we release the control to try to, and you used a powerful word. You said manipulate. I mean, part of being controlling is trying to manipulate circumstances. And I think we all, okay, I'm speaking for all of us, I apologize, but me, I tend to try to do that because I feel like I'm protecting the people in my life by trying to take control so that they don't hurt. But the truth is, I can't do that. And it's hard to let go. So thank you for what you shared.
Sheila, the God who provides. We could see God working in everything, just every part.
God took care of us through the whole time, and he still is. I'm God's child, and he knows what's best for me, and he only allows what's best for me. And even though I didn't agree with him in letting Jimmy have this disease, taking Jimmy from us, I had to respect that. And I just have to keep saying that God knows what's best. And in doing that, I saw how God took care of us through the entire time. We live right here in Buffalo, and who's in Buffalo but Hunter's Hope? And they made us part of their family immediately. All the different programs that Jimmy was in were very unique to Erie County. And we were made a part of all of those. And so many people came to help us that we never knew. And we had the best nursing. Our church backed us immensely. And when after Jimmy passed, and they asked me they were talking about the LCN, and I couldn't understand why you needed an LCN, because we were taken care of so well. All of our doctors were a community. They all talked amongst one another and wanted the best care for Jim. And without relying on God, I don't know how I would have gotten through what we've been through, or how I would go forward to continue living, because I just depend on him for everything.
Thank you, Sheila. And I just want to add too that Sheila's other son, Jimmy's brother, Stephen, is on the Hunter's Hope board. And is he here? He's probably not here. But the value that he has brought to the foundation is immeasurable. And we're so thankful. So tell Steve, I'll tell him. And he's now engaged. So that's cool. But it's just 23 days.
23 days.
If you've not met Stephen, you should meet Stephen for sure. Valerie, the God who loves you more. Wow. Yeah. Just being there for people, that sometimes is all you can do. The story that you shared, Valerie, about the title of your episode, The God Who Loves You More, was just, it really changed a lot in my heart. Can you share that in a condensed way? Yes. Yes.
I can tell that. Hey there. The title of our podcast was God Loves You More. And I'd like to say that to each one of you. God loves you more. And I know that because God told me. So my Nick was diagnosed with adrenoleukodystrophy, and a year and a half later, I was still very angry at God, and I was not very perfect. I was a Christian, but I was so mad. And I was getting a shower one night in the bathroom that was far away from my family so I could be loud, and I just was crying out to God, why? As you've heard, all these women, we've cried out to God, and all these dads and sisters and brothers, and with their not understanding. And I just said, God, I love him more. I just said, God, I love him so much. And God said, I know, I love him more. And he was present in that little bathroom. God was present, and he said 6 words to me that began to heal me. He just said, I know, I love him more. And I had forgotten in all Nick's suffering and agony, as we all know, of losing so many of his abilities. It was very hard to see how much God loved him. But God loved him more, and he loves each of us more. And as I see God continuing to work in my life and in all of our lives, it's like his purpose is not for some easy, fun life. His purpose for each of us is to, first of all, save us, and then to grow us in him. His whole purpose for us is to bring us to him. And
I loved that story too. Thank you for sharing that. Crystal and Wyatt, a greater purpose in pain. This is Crystal's quote. Make Jesus the center of everything, and just remember that you're not alone in this struggle. And then Wyatt said, he had a purpose for what he did, for sending Caitlin, even if it was with the disease. It was a blessing in disguise, even though it doesn't seem like it was.
Well, for starters, you're not alone, just you have a community. Even if you can't find Jesus or God in all of this, know that you're not alone here. And if it takes you a while to get to that place where you can see that he is doing something good, even through all of this pain, there's something amazing that is going to come out of each one of our kids' stories. I know that Caitlin did not go through this for nothing. But from the very beginning of being pregnant with Caitlin and through her journey, God was telling me from the beginning that I was not keeping her. And I didn't understand it at the time, but he was paving something so that I knew that I had to let her go back to him. So he was wrapping me and getting me ready for that, to know that I wasn't alone. She had a purpose and she was his. And her beauty and grace throughout her life and her strength, I could see God through her. When I had Evelyn 4 weeks before Caitlin passed, she was in her last couple of months, and we almost lost her on the way home from visiting some friends. And I just sat there and prayed, like, please let us get her home, because she was on the side of the road. We almost lost her. We got her home, and I looked at her and just said, if you're ready to go, go. But I looked at her and said, if you want to fight, I will help you fight. And she gave that look that she wasn't ready, that she needed to meet her sister. And so she pulled some strength out, and God helped her get through that. And she finally, 4 weeks after Evelyn was born, Caitlin took her last breath, and she just looked at me. And I said, if it's time to go to him, you can go. And she relaxed and left. But you are not alone. He is there, even though it hurts. It was easy to give her back to him.
Love you, Mom. You're great. I'm gonna follow up some of y'all. A greater purpose in the pain of sending Caitlin. You don't realize it at first, but he's always doing something in the background for the better, bringing you into a family such as Hunter's Hope with all these amazing people who know the pain of having a sibling or a child and all that. You meet a family. It's not a friendship. It's a family. No, we only see each other once a year, obviously, besides these past 4 years. But it's like we've known each other all our lives. You know God, I guess, when you may not, you know of him. But once you start to realize everything, then you get to you know of him, but then you start to know him, and you realize all of the I don't know, the good parts of it, such as the family, and you build a relationship with them. And I don't know, I kind of got sidetracked. Really, it's just look on the bright side, I guess. It's my favorite quote. There's just always a greater purpose, such as the family, and it can bring you to God. If you didn't know him then, you knew of him, and then because of it, you get to know him. And I can speak for at least me. I'm sure most of y'all, you knew of him, you just didn't know him. And then you finally started to get to know him. That's when you just realize it. I guess now I'm just repeating myself. But thank you for y'all letting us do this.
And thank you, especially Wyatt, for just your wisdom. Can I hug you? I just have to hug you because I just can't sit here. I'm just blown away by this kid and his wisdom. And I know that a lot of those siblings out there have great wisdom. And you're just an example of the beauty and the goodness of God in the midst of all the things that we've talked about. And you're a younger generation, so you have so much to give. And I just encourage you to continue to be brave and continue to know him, not just know of him. So that's pretty profound what he shared. So we can think that God exists, and maybe some of us in this room don't even believe that. We love you anyway. We're still in community anyway. We're still a family anyway. But you can think you know about God, but I think it's all that we've journeyed through where we really get to know God. So thank you, Wyatt. Next is Becky. Becky, I know you're not up here, and it's okay. You don't have to be up here, but we're going to share a little bit about your episode. Becky's episode was titled Faith Greater Than a Mustard Seed. Nobody is promised tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about next week. I'm living for today, what matters most, today. Okay. We should all walk out of the room when this is all said and done and carry that. We aren't promised tomorrow. None of us in this room is. So why? Well, I got it from my dad, the whole worry thing. Sorry, Dad. I just threw you under the bus a little bit, but especially when you have critically ill children, there's a lot to worry about. And it's, as a mom and as a dad, you wonder what's going to happen next. And how is he going to be in a week? I know for us, the first year and a half of Hunter's life, we treated him like he was dying because that's what we were told. We were told that he would not live to see his second birthday. So for the first year and a half of his life, that's every day. It was like, will today be the day? And we were consumed with fear. But Becky, your wisdom and what you said is absolutely true. We don't need to worry about tomorrow. We don't even, need to project what could happen in a week. Although, I'm sure a lot of you moms, if you have a child in heaven, you tend to walk through worst case scenarios. And immediately when something happens, it's a worst case scenario with other situations. But I'm going to take your advice and try to live that out one day at a time, and just to enjoy the moment. And where's Josh, by the way? Is he at kids camp? Of course he is. Thank you for sharing what you did and inspiring all of us as well.
Caprice, you are our last one. The power in unspoken words. Some days you don't know how you're going to get through it, but you will. You will get through it.
I didn't even talk about really Briley last night. So Briley was diagnosed in 2013 with MLD. And even, first of all, I'm thankful to be here. I am thankful for the podcast. I'm thankful for all these women. I'm thankful for all the families, because everything that everyone has said is so incredibly true. And I look back, it's 2023, and I look back at when we started this journey in 2013 and where we have come. We were just talking about this earlier, where we have come in 10 years with these kids. And of course, we want it faster, and we want all these things. We want newborn screening. We want Lucre Distributed Care Network centers all over. But just to be here and to be in the midst of all of you guys. And like I said last night, Briley lost her fight in October of 21. And we went, not only was she diagnosed, and as everybody knows, you have your days that you haven't slept, you have not taken a shower in a few days. Nurses might not show up, or you might not have nursing care or anything like that. But I cannot explain to you how God was there every day in the midst of all of that. In the middle of this, I lost my mom too, which she was a big caretaker with Briley. And after that, you're like, wow, okay, we can do this. We can do this. But like I've told the ladies, and I've mentioned with some of you guys, even though my mom and I were so close, and to not have her in Briley's journey, I would have not gotten to meet all of the people that helped care for her, that came into our lives, that became family. And so that I had to look at it a different way. And Briley is still continuing she's making a difference in so many people's lives. And it's not because of anything I've done or my husband's done or Brooks has done. It's because God is at complete control in our friends, our family, and our nonprofit to be able to make a difference for her and to keep telling her story. And so for that, I am incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just, want to piggyback off of that, believing for Briley. Thank you so much for all that you do, Caprice, and everyone else that has their own foundation. Like, we're all in this together, and there's power in numbers. And so I'm just so thankful that we are able to partner and do what we do to an even greater extent when we partner together with your foundations as well. It means so much to us. And thank you so much for sharing, Briley. And y'all are so incredible, all of you. And Erin and I, well, you go. Erin, well, okay. We're just so incredibly grateful. I feel like after doing these 3 seasons, I know you more. I love you more. And we want to do another retreat. I think that might, my mom, I didn't talk to my mom about this, but I think that would be such a blessing to be able to continue that if we can as well. And I know it's hard because we all have schedules and it's hard to find any time to be together. But again, Erin and I know you probably want to add to this, but we just stay here. You're not moving, by the way. You're not going anywhere. We just want to thank all of you who participated. And for those of you who have yet to participate and want to, we're here and we're going to continue to do this. And I think that's also something we wanted to talk about during this time that we're together in regard to the podcast. We would really love your input on what it is that you think that we can do and talk about that would bless, of course, our community, but bless the greater community. Because my heart really, yes, I love our community and I want to encourage our community, but my heart really does extend to the greater community. And that's anybody and everybody. That's Mark, our painter, who listens to your stories, and his life, literally before my eyes, his life is being changed. So those people who do not have a sick child, who have not walked through leukodystrophy, who don't have a child in heaven, those people are being impacted. And that, for us as a foundation, is a tremendous blessing to do immeasurably more than anything we could have ever imagined. We'll always do what we're doing, right? We'll always be advocating. We'll always be doing newborn screening, LCN, Symposium, 100th Day of Hope and Prayer for Children. We're going to continue to do all the things that we do, but to be able to reach people who paint and who none of us will ever meet except for me. I get to meet Mark, you met Mark. But I hope you see the impact and the value of that.
I just want to thank everyone again who was a part of the podcast. You guys all impacted my life in so many ways. And I just want to say too, just how much I appreciate you being vulnerable and open to sharing your story. And if you've listened to the podcast, what I say at the end of every episode is that your story matters. You matter, and your life can make a difference that matters for eternity. Make a difference today for someone who is fighting for their tomorrow. And I believe that's what all of you did in sharing your story, is that you were making a difference today for someone who's fighting for their tomorrow, and that your life can make a difference that lasts for eternity. I mean, we see it in front of our eyes, like we've said, how much your stories are impacting so many others. So thank you again. And we just want to open it up. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we want to just, how much time do we have? A couple hours? I'm just kidding. We only have 45 minutes left. So we just wanted to open this up for everyone up here, for anyone, out there, to just share your thoughts, share what you feel that that can add value to the podcast. And we also had talking a little bit about the fact that we shared a lot about mental health during the month of May. I want to just maybe ask you with a sign of hands. If you don't want to raise your hand, that's fine. Because when you deal with anxiety, you don't want to raise your hand. So, but how many of you in this room have been impacted? If your mental health has been impacted by what you've walked through, raise your hand. Yeah. That's why we need to keep talking about it. And we're planning on doing that. I know you might want to add more to this. No, sorry. This happens in the podcast too. It's a good thing we have editing tools so we could cut out our ums. No, I'm just kidding. But
in terms of mental health, I will say that this next season that we're doing, season 4, which I can't believe we're on season 4. It's crazy. But we are focusing on mental health. And I hope that you guys will listen, but also, like she said, just give us your feedback on what you want to hear, because we have our own mental health journeys, and we talk to each other about what helps us and what doesn't help us and all of those things. But we haven't lived your story, we haven't lived your life, and so we want to know what has helped you, and also what has not helped you, and what we can learn from you. So
also, in regard to the mental health episodes, a lot of people listen to them. So, and I said from the very beginning, yes, you deal with the numbers and the statistics and all the things as far as when podcasts go, and like you look at things and the day when it's best to put all those things. But at the end of the day, to me, what matters most is that Mark's life was changed. You see what I'm saying? Numbers are important, I get that, but and the numbers are there, but it's just like the fact that we can impact one person's life is just makes all of this worth it. And I hope it made it worth it for you guys. And so regarding other topics or things that you feel would add value, does anyone want to add to the conversation? Do you guys have anything? And if you have any questions, yes, for us. Do you want me to I'm going to bring you the microphone. Is that okay? Oh, I can do it. Okay.
So I wanted to thank you guys for putting together the podcast. My husband, Mike, and I have listened to it. My name is Kelly, by the way. And this is Sophia. She has Krabbe disease. Some things that I thought would be beneficial to suggest for additions for the future seasons. So in addition to your podcast, last year when Sophia was diagnosed, I found another podcast that I felt really spoke to our situation. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's called The Rare Life. It's hosted by a mom that has a son that's affected by a rare genetic condition. And in addition to podcast episodes that feature affected families and tell their story, she also hosts some special episodes where she brings on either doctors or palliative care and hospice care. She also had an episode with travel tips, like traveling with a child or a family member with medical complexities and disabilities. Like, how do you even get on an airplane with all of the gear? So I think potentially, featuring a couple special episodes that bring on some specialists, just a different perspective, because we have our perspective as parents, but also maybe reaching out into the communities to find the perspective of that doctor who maybe had to deliver the bad news, or the palliative care nurses that come in and care for our children, or even just therapists that have interacted with kids with leukodystrophies, offering their perspective, because like you said, their lives are impacted as well just by knowing our kids and knowing our families.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yes. And Sophia, you too, Sophia. But yes, thank you so much. And we have had some discussion about bringing specialists on, doctors on, one specifically for mental health, Dr. Daniel Amen, and all those people that we have discussed. We don't want to tell you everything. Hello. But no, thank you so much. And that's so true, to get the other perspective. We also had discussed possibly doing a season called Conversations with My Counselor. We're working on that. So these ideas are so valuable. And like I said, when we set out to do the podcast, we wanted to impact our community, right? And we also wanted to be aware of there's this whole other community that's listening. So we're very mindful and prayerful about that too. But I just love what you said about the travel tips. Oh my gosh, how do you travel, right? So yeah, those are thank you for suggesting that other podcast, because I know a lot of people in here would probably want to listen to that podcast as well. So thank you so much. And thank you for being brave and being hear you're new. So I hope we don't overwhelm you too much, but maybe we will. And so what? Come back again. But
for the mental health part, I was thinking an idea would be about PTSD, especially after you've lost your child. I know we talked a lot about it yesterday, but for me, after we lost Dawson, and then we had my son Lucas, even though we tested him as an embryo since we did IVF, and then we got a newborn screening ordered, it seemed like I was always holding my breath. And then I was like, he's not walking yet. Why isn't he walking yet? And then he got really sick with RSV when he was 7 months old, and he was in the PICU. And I remember they took us up there, and they said, all right, we're going to deep suction him. It's a little traumatic for parents. And I was like, oh, I'll be fine. I used to do this. And then when they did it and I heard it, I broke down because I was living it again with another child. And it just brought it all back. And it's little things that it brings you back to a worst time of your life, the hardest time. So I think PTSD sneaks up on you, and it's just hard to deal with, and you don't know how to deal with it. So.
I agree 100%. And we will absolutely be doing that because I deal with that. I was diagnosed with that initially. And it's not just, where's our military? Like it goes beyond, being in the military. It's a very common thing that you hear about that people in the military experience. Well, I think probably every one of us in this room has experienced PTSD or has it, or, and so, yes, thank you for bringing that up, Casey. We will definitely explore that and talk about that more. And it's so hard. I get it. Like, I think we all do with your healthy kids. You're just like, you hear one thing. And even when your kids are 28, 24, I mean, it's just like, that trauma comes back. And yeah, so thank you.
Just one thing I was thinking about earlier, and it became even more obvious to me when I looked at all the ladies in the chairs up here, was maybe it's because we're women, we have more words and use more words. But I think an underrepresented, especially with mental health, is men. Like I would love to see and hear some of the male perspectives, because as a wife, I would really like to support my husband well and be that helper. Even though we're going through a lot of the same things, he reacts in a very different way to things. And so hearing from some gentlemen, and I was right away thinking of your Mark. I mean, how amazing would it be for him to hear from some men too? Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that 100%. And it is something we've talked about. And also siblings. We've also talked about having siblings share their story and having them on the podcast because, Cam's going to be on the podcast. She hasn't been on yet, but she will be on the podcast. But those are two things that I definitely, we have talked about doing in the future, because like you said, it's so important. And with mental health and men, I think that that's something that isn't talked about enough, and it needs to be talked about, especially for the men who don't want to talk about their struggles with mental health and need to know that they're not the only ones. So thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say, off of the sibling thing, I do want you to take off of that siblings and how it does impact them and like their life of the siblings that were here with the child and the siblings that were not here with the child, because my daughter has guilt that she was not here with my son, where my son has a total different outlook, and his life is completely
different and impacted differently. I don't know. And his career path is completely impacted by his brother. I don't know. I just feel like siblings are a great outlook.
Absolutely. And also, I just want to share this one thing that my doctor shared with me. I don't know, the kids were little. Hunter was still alive. That was when I was, or no, it was after Hunter had already gone to heaven. And that was when I was like going back and forth to the doctor numerous times because I was afraid to go on medication for my mental health. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time, or listen to the podcast if you want to hear it. But that she said this to me. She said, when your children become adults, they will grieve all over again, totally different with an adult brain. And I always thought about, I thought about as the years would go by, and Erin and Cameron seemed to be doing just fine. And we were going, we were living, and, they were involved in school and all the things. And it always in the back of my mind, I wondered about that. And I believe it's true.
Yeah, it's true 100%. And I didn't know what grief was until like 4 years ago, and I'm 28. So it definitely impacts you at different stages of your life. And I know both Cam and I can speak to that. And I love what you said too about the children that weren't here when the sibling was here. I've never actually thought about that, but I can see how that would be really hard. And so that's definitely something we'll talk about. So thank you.
Amy, go ahead.
I'd like to speak to that also because I'm so glad you said that, because it's underrepresented. I feel like there's so many kids here who've grown up here, and what we're finding, our boys are in their 20s, is that whatever they did as a child, it's different from what you do as an adult. And even the way that they took it as a child may or may not be, kind of where the facts were, but they internalize these beliefs, and that's just their belief, and so to try to undo the aftermath of that, they're not doing it. But it's a real thing. It's hard. And, I don't know that there are necessarily resources out there, but honestly, I feel like they would all benefit from hearing, more hard stories from the siblings. Like yours was beautiful. And what y'all said together about the mental health awareness was wonderful and needs to be said more. I'm so glad you did it. And the tips that y'all had were really good and practical. And I would say don't be afraid to say it again, because to not say it again means somebody had to hear that first podcast and, internalize it, but just keep it going, and I also think it'd be good to have some professional type advice in there. And I know y'all are getting it from professionals, but just to go, okay, here's just some different topics, that you could get to, and even just maybe on the website to have them sorted, here's family stories, or here's, practical advice for living with a child, or here's, mental health type, just help, so I feel like this is a really powerful thing, and it's gonna do wonders, I believe.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And those are great ideas that we'll definitely implement. And also what you said just about going back to the siblings, I know that every sibling deals with grief differently. I know Cam and I definitely have dealt with it very differently. And like we've said, in different stages of life, grief is in waves, and you all know that. So, but yeah, thank you very much.
And as far as, you guys don't think Erin and I are professionals or something? No, I'm just joking. We're way not. And we disclaim that, or we put the disclaimer out there. But yes, we want to add value to every episode, value to the podcast through professionals weighing in on these particular things. So, and if you know those professionals, bring them to the table, okay? Because anyone that you feel on your heart would benefit the greater community, just let us know. We're in this together. This isn't our podcast. This is our podcast. So please share your knowledge and what you want to share with us about it. Lena. Oh.
So in 2009, when my boys were diagnosed, I had a woman who I became close to, Susan Leip, a leukodystrophy mom, told me to love my husband. And I'll never forget those words. And I said, I do love him. She goes, no, I need you to love your husband. And I said, I love my husband. And at the time, we were married 10 years. And really, we were that weird couple that we like to be together. And we never argued, never fight. And I told her that. And here it is, nearly 24 years later, married. I still love that guy of mine. And I think that's important, especially you've told your story in a book. I think it's really important to do a podcast on that, regardless who your partner is. If you have a partner, they have a baby together. And I think it's important, you know, not everybody's meant to be together, you know, and not everybody is going to stay married, you know, or be with the significant other. But I think that is a strong, powerful podcast to discuss.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes.
And I don't give my husband enough credit. I love him to death. I never give him enough credit.
And marriages are impacted. You all know our marriages are impacted. The fact that most of us are still together. Hello. The fact that Jim and I are married. Hello. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Jim, we got to get him on. And I'm so thankful. Like I said, I'm so thankful we opened this up. We still have a little more time, I think. Yeah. But yes, all of your feedback matters to us. We want you to send us feedback. All of your ideas are so important. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hold on. I just want to add to that really quick. Are there any siblings in here? Married siblings? I will say that marriage is hard when you're a sibling too. Because my husband, that was one of the hardest things when I was about to get married, was knowing that my husband, Parker, didn't know Hunter. And yet Parker loves Hunter and he's never met him before. So I will say that that is a whole another level of hard that I don't think people realize, because we don't have a child with the disease, and yet it still impacts us greatly. And I've seen how it's impacted Parker, and he's never met Hunter before. But our nephew, actually, he passed away last spring, and he had a heart disease, and he was only a year and a half old. But I've seen how knowing who Hunter was through me impacted how he loved his nephew so much. So I think that is definitely something that needs to be talked about.
And if it's okay, this is the mother control freak in me, if how, you know, and sharing how your relationship with your spouse is impacted when you're going through, you know, grief or experiencing like missing Hunter or whatever the case may be. I mean, you know, like your spouse could think, wait a minute, that was like, so how many years ago? But you know what I mean? There's so much in marriages with siblings too. And maybe that's in the sibling season too, about marriages. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to speak to that husband thing. Not talking about him, of course, but
that husband thing. I like how you just said that. I'm going to speak about that husband thing.
Yeah.
The guy and the husbands are like, I'm going to speak about that wife thing.
Well, it's really more the man thing. You know, it's not really whether or not you're married. I mean, I'm even kind of talking about my adult sons, of just to go, the men are way less likely to seek help and they're way less likely to talk about it. And so if you could kind of look at what you put out there as like, this is for the guy who's not going to go to therapy. Let's get him this way.
I love that. And that's the title. This is for the guy who won't go to therapy. I love it.
But then the other thing I thought of was maybe, like when you talk about, I know some of the stuff has come from y'all's counselors and it's great, but what if you did like a, not like a play acting session, but not a real session, but kind of in between, you know, the person describing what they're going through and then the counselor, you know, coming back and saying, okay, you know,
we want to do that so bad. I asked my counselor if she would, because she has been so instrumental and valuable in our lives. She would do it without giving her name and all that kind of stuff, that she conversations with my counselor, literally it would be about the things that we're walking through and we're talking about it in a very conversational kind of way. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
something like
absolutely.
that?
Will
Yeah.
she do it?
She's praying about it. Come on. You don't need to pray about that. But really, I mean, if just hope that she doesn't want to, how counselors, how counselors are. No, they don't want to cross the line of being, so pray about it. Hopefully she will. Or if you have someone that you would suggest too, please. We're open to suggestions. Anyone else? Yes.
It's kind of funny she's handing me this mic because that's exactly where I was going when I was thinking about relationships, because I'm on the other side of you two. I did get a divorce after we lost Anthony, and we really tried hard, but we grieved differently. I was so mad at him because I thought he didn't grieve, because I was thinking, how can he just go on with life and I'm dying over here? And then I felt like he was always trying to be positive so that I would stop grieving. But after I lost Dalton and I saw how he grieved, I mean, we were divorced. I was remarried. He was remarried. And I saw how he grieved over Dalton. And I know he grieved over Anthony too. I was grieving so I couldn't see it. So I too believe that a relationships type podcast would be great with us, with our families, on how we care for our children differently that are here, and then our children that have passed, how we grieve differently.
That's a really good point too, because everybody, all the perspective that we have is the life that we've walked, right? So when we approach, say, an episode, like I can only share, speaking of me, like I can only share what I've walked through myself and what has helped me. And that's why it's so valuable to have stories and to have your input, because then, it's hard, because it's hard to see beyond what you know. I can't know what I don't know, right? And so we just want to be able to do that. And so that is why your input is so important to us. Mom, I mean, would you want to add anything to how important? And my mom, I mean, doing this, you guys know.
Thank you, Jackie.
So, and we'll,
I was waiting for you. No, I just want to say that I fell in love. I interviewed all of these wonderful people for the podcast. And then we had to edit it. So like some of the interviews were like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, and at the end of each
can
one,
I say something about that?
Hers, Diana won the prize. Hers was 2.5 hours.
And
it
during,
was 2 sessions.
And during the editing, so in case these people who don't know me, I've been married 3 times, but we talked about my marriage to Tommy, and then all of a sudden I was married to Jeff. But there was
it was hard to follow, but it was recorded.
So. It was recorded. So during the editing, I bet people were going, "Now who's Jeff?"
But we did have to go through an edit, and for some it was so easy. For others, it was a nightmare. No, no, not a nightmare, but it was a little more difficult. But what I wanted to point out is what I fell in love with. Not that I didn't already love all these women, because I already knew them, but just I gained such an appreciation for them and got to know them so much more. And what struck me was the uniqueness in each one of them. Yeah, there were threads in all their stories that were the same, but each one was so special and so unique and wonderful. And I felt how God must have felt when he created them. They're just beautiful people. And God gave me the opportunity to get to know them in that way. So I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. It was wonderful. It was hard. I mean, can you imagine all these stories? It was overwhelming emotionally, but it was wonderful. And I thank you. And it will continue.
I want to add that a segment I'm thinking of while I hear everybody in your
your great ideas. By the way, Jackie, thanks for crying with me during our interview. I'm sure you did it with all of us, but thank you. It brought us all together, right? Another segment that might be ideal and actually might even unfold within all these segments that we're brainstorming about. But I'm thinking, what if there's a segment on how hard it is to find God? Because my faith is so strong, and it grew very strong, and even when I was inactive in my faith, looking back, I knew God was there the whole time, even though I wasn't active in my own faith. But then as my faith grew stronger, it just became very easy and natural to fall in God's plans, right? To follow. But I know that that's difficult for others. And regardless of our testimonies, like they see it and they feel it, but they just can't get there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that is. And yeah, and everyone is in a different place in their walk, if they have a walk. It's our hope that through sharing, the greater hope is that people will come to faith in Christ. They will know God. They will start to ask the questions and all that. But it, like you said, the struggle of that and to share that is very important. We're writing all this down, by the way, and this is recorded. So if we lose that, we'll have, Mom, someone else. Wyatt.
Yeah.
When Wyatt speaks, we listen.
I got nervous really quick. Not gonna lie. So when I talked earlier, I talked on you know of God, but you don't know him. I feel like a lot of people, they struggle, at least I do, and I think we all still struggle with certain things, but getting to know him, it's not an easy thing. You don't pray at night and you're like, oh, I know him. Like we have a great relationship. It's just like a marriage, you don't just, am I wrong? Like you don't just have a conversation. You're like, we've known each other for forever, right? You can't just have one conversation. You're like, we're good, and then never talk to them again. It takes time, and maybe it's reading his word, the Bible. I started to try and read the Bible a few months ago, and I was reading like 3 or 4 pages. I'd read it like 20 minutes later because it took me forever. 20 minutes was me being quick if I was lucky. But you read it and then you close it and you're like, I don't even know what I read. I don't. So it's like, what was the point of that? And so one time I was at church, and it was Wednesday night youth church, and one of the youth leaders, he says, you don't have to always read 4 pages or a chapter or an entire book. It's, you start off somewhere. Maybe it's a singular verse, maybe it's like a paragraph, and you sit there and you read it and you, I guess, dissect it and know what it's saying. So that way you're getting to know him. You're not just skimming over it and then boom, you're done. Because I do it all the time when I study and then I fail the test. So obviously it doesn't exactly work. So you get there and you read it and you think to yourself and you figure it out. And then once you do that and you get better at it, you can start to do more. And then you're building that relationship with God, and then you're praying and you're talking to him. And it doesn't always have to be a prayer. And I suck at praying. Like, I'm terrible. Just going to keep it honest. But it's not like you have to be great. You talk to him like he's your best friend, because he is. Like, you just talk to him. You just have a conversation with him. I guess, if that makes any sense. I'm not good at going in depth on that. Quit laughing at me, Mom.
That deserves a clap.
You are laughing at me. I'm so very nervous. I'm shaking right now.
We're going to do a solo Wyatt episode.
Actually?
Yeah, we are, Wyatt.
Go me, I guess.
I love that. I love that. And you know what? It reminded me of what your dad says. He says, so cute. Jim is he just says it like it is. If you know anything about him, he's like, I don't pray to God. I just talk to God. That is like exactly, it's building that relationship. And like obviously I wouldn't even have a relationship with my daughter if I didn't talk to her and we spent time together. And yet there is an unspoken love and relationship that I know Hunter and I had, even though he couldn't speak. But it's spending time and it's doing all the things that Wyatt just said. So you're the man.
I talk to him about fishing all the time.
About fishing? You
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, because
That's
I'm
the
having a
thing.
conversation with him.
Exactly. It's
something,
talking
right?
to him about anything.
Yeah, I'm like,
and everything.
Thank you, God, for letting me catch that fish.
Exactly.
Yep. Then I pray to him that he'll have mom buy me some baits and stuff. But
wait, you want your mom to buy you what?
Baits and stuff to catch the fish.
Bait for your fish?
Yeah, to catch the fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wants you to buy him bait?
Yeah, those prayers haven't came true yet. So.
I'll buy you bait.
Oh, thank you. Too sweet.
Anyone else want to add to this before we close? Yes, Becky.
So I just want to say I am just so blessed to be here. So thank you very much. And I'm extremely blessed that I went to the retreat. It changed my life. I'm a new person, and I just love all these women up here so much. And they've been a big part of my life. And they've been family to me, even when my own family hasn't been there for me. And for many years, I lived in fear. I lived in anxiety and hatred. Like, I hated myself to the point I didn't care what happened to me. But yet I believed in God. I didn't pray for myself. I prayed for my children. And after coming home from this retreat, and I almost didn't go, I turned around several times out of fear. And I am just a totally new person. And I look at life differently. A big weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
Praise.
And for a long time, I said, God, why would you allow me to watch my son suffer when I loved him so much? Like, it's not fair. But you know what? He watched his son suffer. And I don't think I could have done what he did. And he loves us that much.
Amen.
And I'm just so thankful that I went and that I'm forever changed. So, and I just thank you guys for everything that you've done for my family, all of you, because you guys have all blessed my family in more ways than one. So thank you.
Thank you. We love you, Becky.
Becky, you make some really cool cakes too.
And that right there, like just that is just why. There it is. The why is right there. So thank you. Yes, yes, of course.
Quick. So 10 years ago when we first came here, Giovanni said, like, I packed the whole house and I said, yeah, and the kitchen sink too. So that lovely couple in the corner, they talked about, packing and how to get here. So I'll never forget, I met the Wilson family and I said to this family, at the time was 7, I said, you guys came from Oregon? She said, yes. I said, can I come to your room and see what you packed? And David and her said, okay. And Mel gave me the dirtiest look. And I said, I'm going to see, because at the time she had Marshall. He was on oxygen, BiPAP. She had, I guess, the shaky vest and, all this stuff. And then she had 2 babies in diapers. So I'm like, I need to come. So they opened up their rooms. They had the 2 rooms and they let me look in their suitcase. And because of them, we started traveling after that. And I know it sounds funny, but I was afraid. Like, our first big trip was to come here. And then, we did, I think, on Make-A-Wish after the fact. But Tammy showed me how she packed. And she was precise down to like the outfits, the socks, so she needs to be on that podcast, How to Pack.
Yeah. All right, we're writing Tammy next to the traveling one.
Party in my room.
But isn't
I remember Lena telling me that story about how Tammy packed. And when I was packing my stuff and I had all these outfits, I was like, oh my God, I hope Tammy does not see my luggage. I have so much stuff. I was like, she would just be like, too much.
Can you, do you not love this? This is what it's all about. I'm so thankful that we're here together. I'm so thankful that we're finally back together, and you all are amazing people. You inspire us on the daily, but even more so when we're together. I never have left here without being changed again. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just want to, I'm going to close us in prayer, if that's okay. Is what's happening after this?
We have lunch at noon.
Oh, okay.
And before you all leave, we want to get a group picture, so don't leave.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, Erin wants.
One last thank you to my grandma, because she literally is the most amazing person that I know. And thank you for doing all of these incredible interviews. Without you, this would not be possible, and lives wouldn't be changing right now if it wasn't for you just having these people share their stories. So thank you. I love you so much.